Hello everyone and welcome to our Circle and Salve Women. For today we're going to talk about if one to believe, is this enough? And in my article I talked about how my husband was so excited about getting some ATVs for us to ride around in a location that he had researched and found, that we could drive to and then be able to just like go into some heavy forest grounds and dig into the dirt with our ATVs. And I was excited that he was excited. And so, of course, I was all in. And, it's interesting because in this one, I talk about sometimes what others don't see, they don't believe. So even if we were to tell the story, the perilous story of our journey that had occurred in one of our very early rides, is that sometimes when you share something that has happened, people kind of go, no, that didn't happen, because there's no way that you would have been able to overcome that or, make it through without even a scratch. And yet when you do, then that's all the satisfaction to really have lived through it and know that there was someone else who was there to believe that it did. And, my husband and I, now going into over 3 decades being together, it's funny because I always say sometimes when your best friend could be your worst enemy because they know you so well. And at that point, we had already had, I think, our first 3 children. And so it was interesting because we had gone to Hawaii and gone to Oahu, and we're one of those people that, we'll stay in a decent hotel. We don't like to have a lavish hotel or so, because it's great if you do. If it's great if you can. If you want to splurge, go with your bad self. But for us, it's like we use the room as a place to just sleep, right, and to find some comfort in sleeping, and then rise the next day and then take on another adventure. And so I remember going to Oahu, and we got to go to an excursion where we did the ATV. Also, it was like an ATV riding, and it was like the place where they had filmed the Jurassic Park and also 50 First Dates, and it was just pretty awesome, where they pointed out where still the imprint of the dinosaur, foot, or is it paws? I'm not sure. I'm thinking that it would be like the feet of the dinosaur. I'm going to stick with that until, I stand corrected and you look it up or already know. Go with your bad self if you know the exact term I'm talking about. But they had the imprint, of the dinosaur feet on there. And it was pretty amazing because you're like, oh, that's so cool, that connection. And so we went ATV riding, but we rode with a team, and it was such a great feeling to just be able to go, wow, we did this. And we like to do checkoffs of saying kind of like that bucket list of things that you have done in life, and maybe you will never do it again, but you at least got to do it once. Well, shortly after, or maybe a year or so, my husband obviously still thought about that as part of something that we can continue. And so we had these ATVs, and here we were just thinking to ourselves, okay, this is going to be an excursion and adventure that, hey, no one's going to tell us what to do. We're just going to go about it. And I love the fact that he was able to lead, because he did his research already of what there was some paths there that we could have taken. I wouldn't have known where to go. And so it was just such an easy ride in my head that we could share as a memory together. And so there we were, we unloaded, we geared up and had our helmets on, and we're riding along, and lo and behold, I see him stop, and I felt him, and that's that partnership, regardless of what you think you may already know about the person. In many other circumstances, it's moments where when something doesn't feel right, you feel it already before you hear them telling you. And so as soon as he stopped, I knew something was wrong. He didn't have to tell me, because he was ahead. And so all of a sudden, if it was either he or I that looked, I remember the walls over here. and they were quite formidable, you know, just really just standing with their rocker and their deep roots from the trees and so forth. So, but on the right hand side, all of a sudden I couldn't help but look down, because he had, I want to recall that I think it was he who had taken note, obviously having stopped. And I looked and I was like, oh, there is a very great height of a cliff to our right. And not to even add into that, but then I guess right away my mind goes, I look at the wheels and the path had become so narrow. And it, you know, I was able to put things together immediately. We are on a narrow path, and is this going to get even more narrow, where all of a sudden we're going to derail, and we're going to just find ourselves tumbling down with these heavy equipment that we were on. And, you know, you get to a moment where you just look at each other and you start to communicate without even saying what's on your mind, because you're thinking of all your options. You look back as far as you can, because you feel that your body has really glued itself to the machinery that you're on, the vehicle, and you know that going backward wouldn't make any sense, because if you're on an ATV and you're sitting upright or high above, to see the angle of your wheels would be just quite perilous to even take that chance going backward. And looking back, we'd already gone a little bit further more than we had thought, because, you know, when you're on a vehicle, you think you only have moved like 5 feet forward, and you look back and you go, oh, we were actually riding on this narrow path a little bit longer than we thought. And so going backward was not going to be the case. Obviously going to the right was what we were trying to prevent. And then to the left, you've got a wall there. So there were no exits other than in the front. And I always say, you know, if you can get in, you can get out. But that getting out piece was a choice that perhaps in our mind was not the first one, but it was the only one that we had. I could get up and walk away from my vehicle, but then I would have to get up on my husband's and then get up and walk away with his also. That was not an option he even mentioned. And I think just because out of the kindness and goodness of his heart, it was just like, okay, you know, we really only have one choice, and that is to traverse ourselves forward inch by inch. And that is exactly what we did. And this wasn't a straight path. If you go through trails, it looked like a motor crossing path. So you know, it was going against this wall that skirted sometimes to the right or to the left. And so I could see that my husband, as we then decided, you know, really when we have no ultimate decision but to do so, to just move forward, we looked at each other and we said the words, I love you. And that was it. It was like, okay, let's do this. Put our helmets back on, our visors down. And I can't honestly recall if you had to take your helmet off or that my visor would just go up. But regardless, we just you know, got back or started our engines again and started to move forward. I cannot tell you to this day how long that took. And I want to say that we definitely took our time. And I do recall my husband, you know, looking at times back at me when he paused at whatever angle that he could find to look back at me. But I always wanted him to see me as if not to worry. And I remember telling myself that you got to do your part, because I did not want him to worry about me. I wanted him to focus on himself. And I'm not going to yell that at him saying, focus on you. It was in my actions. It was in my demeanor. It was in the way that I was projecting my own vibes to go, hey, got this, let's go. And only until we had reached safety was I then able to, you know, just turn off the engine, and for my husband to turn off his engine, and both of us to get off, take off our helmets, give ourselves a hug. And believe it or not, we laughed. We didn't talk about what just happened, because you live through it. And I know that I just spoken about the victim role in my previous video and article. And it's like when you found yourself in a situation that you not necessarily like volunteered for or even asked to be or could even fathom, there's nothing to talk about. you completed the challenge, you know? And it's like you just feel that you just got trained in a situation, a dire situation, where it's not as if you would ask yourself to ever go through again. But because of the strength that you built up to get through it, you actually feel stronger from it all. And it's, you know, you're not going to tell everybody what you just went through, because how would anyone understand? How would anyone even think that whatever exaggeration you may be giving, which in this case, no matter I feel like how much we would have exaggerated, it could not, for anyone who's ever gone through situations where, you know, you said you had to be there, you had to been there to understand, that's that case. That was that moment where who in the world could even, you know, explain exactly how everything was happening as you were just trying to move forward inch by inch to get out of that situation. And so you in your heart already assume, or, you know, maybe that's a strong word in this case, but you can just say to yourself, I don't need to share with anyone, because the one person who I needed to believe in me to get me through that was with me, and we did it together. And that was the only person that needed to know. And so I truly feel, when, you know, my emotions back then, just that instillment, you know, like just when, you know, I feel as if like that moment where God just kind of was in the presence, you know. And I always think to myself, for those of you who've read like the New Testament piece of the Bible, where like Jesus just was asleep, and then there's a storm, and he gets up and he's kind of like, you know, where's thy faith, or so. And so for me, it wasn't like I was testing anyone or myself or my husband. It wasn't like, you know, I'm going to be so strong and I'm going to tell people, I'm going to share with the world how I was able to overcome this. There was no proof in it all other than peace, be still, you know. And all of a sudden it was like, yep, the sun was shining. That's all I can remember, is the sun was shining through the forest canopy of trees, and I was just inching my way through, and I was calm. I was peaceful. I was thinking to myself, it sounds silly, but I was just like, this is a journey that we'll remember forever. I already knew I was going to make it through. And so in this, like I said, I'm sure I've shared this in more or less words in another article, but if my grandchildren or my great-grandchildren and all those offspring beyond were to ever find this, you know, I want them to know that you're going to find yourself in dire situations, and you're going to find yourself in situations where you don't need to share with the world what you're going through. It's just a matter of the challenge for you to get through it yourself, and because this challenge was made for you. And it's nothing where you get to like be prideful of. You just know that it was just a part of a challenge in life that you get to live through and be stronger from, because it's part of your training for more things to come. And you don't ask for more perilous moments as so, but you say to yourself, if I went through that, then I can go through whatever is ahead. And I truly believe that that's the message that God was giving me, is, you know, you had this. I already knew. And, you know, it was amazing, because to see my husband ahead, I didn't even put it on myself as like, you know, or put it on him. It was more of like, he needs to be able to look back at me and know that he could trust me, that he had nothing to worry about, that he would just need to focus on leading, and I would be right behind him. And so, you know, if one to believe, is this enough? I would think absolutely. And if that one is just you, even in moments where you have no one around, it's more than enough. And I tell my students that all the time. I've told my children that all the time. Unfortunately, we lose focus. We lose hope. Sometimes things are bleak, and we forget that the greatest belief is within us. And there's a sign, I didn't mention this in my article, but there's a sign that I had up until this year, and because we have temporarily moved to a new building, But, you know, in the absence or presence of another, the greatest applause comes from you. And I mentioned, I think it was an audience. You don't need an audience. You know? You just need yourself to get through what you need to get through in building your strength and your own determination to pursue whatever else is ahead. And that's it. It's just keep going and keep taking the ceiling down, saying, give me another higher ceiling, give me another higher ceiling, so that you're that eagle that soars the skies, and you're not just that chicken waiting to be devoured at the bottom. You are made to soar, and there are going to be some storms. There are going to be so many things that will make you think, oh, the ground is better, lower below is better. But then you have to tell yourself, but I was made for more, and I know I can do this. So in the words of my mother, God bless us all. Think of yourself as that really unbreakable strength, that it was made to do so many things. And you know what? You don't need a lot to believe in you. You just need you to believe in yourself first, and then all around you will be strengthened from your own belief. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.